Call to order the special school board meeting of January 28, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. Everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your right hand over your heart. Repeat with me. Wendy Jonathan, are you here?
Yes.
Linda Porras, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, then we will say for roll call that all board members and all cabinet members are present. Is there a motion to approve the agenda of the special meeting? By Tricia Pierce. Is there a second?
Second.
By Anna Conover. Is there any discussion? Okay, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries 5-0. Okay, public comment on, oh wait, we have to, public comment on open session items. Ms. Conover.
Okay. I will be reading the online public comments first. This is from Amelia Howell. I'm a full-time worker, single mother, who is also an essential worker to one of the main hospitals. The request to continue with elective class to remain online would propose many issues. My student would not be able to go home and then return to school every other period. Performing arts is just as important as any other subject. If football, which is a contact sport, is able to resume, then how is band considered more of a concern during this pandemic? There are many studies to show that performing arts reduces cortisol levels, markers for stress, and that through art, people can induce positive mental states. Number 2 is from Jason Gaylor. The proposed COVID safety plan states that instruction for music electives will only be taught virtually in a reopening hybrid format. That does not work. Groups cannot play together using currently available video conferencing technology. Bands are easily able to play outdoors. They can be spaced out appropriately. We've got to allow students to get back together and play music together, and it can easily be done in a way that maintains proper distancing and safety protocol. This would be a giant boost to music student morale and well-being if you allow on-campus music instruction again. And that is all for the online comments. And communications from the floor. In accordance with bylaws of the board number 9323, time is reserved for oral communications by members of the Board of Education or by citizens present. Citizens wishing to be heard on agenda items shall have a 3-minute limit and should indicate their intention at this time. In accordance with the law, decisions of the board cannot be made on any matter not previously published before the board meeting, as indicated in bylaws of the board, number 9323.2. And the first one I have is Kimberly Hetherington, who is ceding her 3 minutes, or is getting her 3 minutes from Celeste Feeler.
Okay. Good evening, board. I have spoke before and stand again to address the board because I often don't get a response to solid questions that merit one. I suppose it's likely much easier to deem me an angry or crazy parent because I am passionate and cannot seem to understand why we haven't been served or been heard. More importantly, that my son's rights to an in-person education are the very essence to upholding his IEP. IEPs are meant for brick and mortar, therefore they are not being able to be upheld or met, which is unlawful. This district receives a hefty penny for special education students. I am fully aware of this. I am also fully aware that there were a very grim amount of special education teachers and paraeducators that we're even willing to return to the small cohorts that are so touted to be positive and so ongoingly well. Yet I have not met an actual one attending a small cohort. My son is now at the location of a small cohort at the YMCA. Thank you very much for providing that cohort at the Adams Early Childhood Education Learning Center, where my son was at for 4 years before this year. Very familiar with the property, very familiar with the system. These plans to be discussed today, just days before the February 1st deadline to apply with our county health supervisor's office, gives me yet another opportunity to urge everyone here to do the right thing and open our schools. Find the education and certified providers and teachers that will work for you, and get students like my son back to the classroom. My son cannot learn continually for 6 hours a day. I have to work. My son needs to have somebody with him one-on-one. I pay $20 or $15 an hour for 20 hours a week in addition to his learning pod. Roughly that math comes to $2,000. That's on average. God forbid I have to work the weekends too, to work more and make more money to make ends meet. I am not getting assistance from any of you to help me survive. Many of our students are already tied or almost addicted to screens. I'm talking about special needs. In my house, it's special needs. Parents and therapists have been working for years to get them off and to explore other developmental opportunities like gross and fine motor social interaction. The continued expectation to use screens for distance learning is making these goals impossible. We have students that now have more behavioral issues when we ask them to relinquish the device. I know this happens. It happens at every school, and now it's happening in every home and at every therapist's office. They are also very overstimulated and are having significantly difficult sleep patterns. Parent and child relationships are being sacrificed when parents are put into the role of teacher because our children are not independent learners. It is creating disruption to that relationship. Parents and students are both exhausted and frustrated. Students like my son with autism in particular are extremely confused and anxious, and many are now having significant behavioral issues that they never had. My son is regressing. My son is eloping. I have had the cops called on me because my son will find any way to get more time outside. The longer they remain in this model of learning, the more severe this will become. It will have a direct and negative impact on teachers and students when they finally return to school. The longer the delay, the more difficult it will be to help them in that transition back. Teachers and students alike will require significant support from district professionals such as the mental health, behavior, speech, and occupational therapist specialists. Students that didn't before may require one-on-one paraeducator support. I am publicly, formally, verbally requesting that I will be needing one-on-one support for my child. I have asked this for a while as it is, and it is not possible via Zoom. All will create financial burden and staffing concerns for this district. I will push on these points and how incredibly insensitive it is to not respond to me and to deem me as an angry parent. I am a single mother. I am well educated. I am bilingual. I have an incredible memory and retention to dates and facts. I am a healer. I'm a giver and a helper. It's a blessing to have the level of kindness and empathy that I do because I am a special needs parent. I have to be tough as nails because that is the world. It is tough. Show up, do your job, get back to work, and quite frankly, find another job if it doesn't work, because at this point, this should be the only point blank. Open our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Tricia Ryan.
Hello again. Good to see you guys. I am just here to remind you, you're voted to represent the students. You're not here to represent the different communities. You're here to represent our students. Students' needs need to come first, before staff, before anybody else's. Students' needs, just please keep that in mind as you go through this. A lot of us, I know everybody's working hard. All of us as teachers are working very hard. But if it's hard for a teacher, think how hard it is for many of our students. That's who we have to consider first. Please, you receive the money, please just, I know you've done great safety measures. I feel very safe going to campus every day. So I just wanted to say that. And consider high school sports that could be done intra-district. We'd really appreciate that as senior parents. We'd hope you're considering that, but just in this whole situation that you guys have thrown on you, and I know it's a lot, you have to do students first, okay? Enough with the staff coming before the students, please. Thank you. Oh, this is my old.
Thank you. And next we have Trina Gonzalez-Alisi.
Good evening, board members and cabinet, Superintendent Bailey. I just wanted to take a moment, as I always do, to appreciate the collaborative efforts that we have been working on through the district as well as the teachers union. I applaud the rapidity that this safety plan was developed. I think it's very thorough and comprehensive. The district did consult with the teachers union, and we're very appreciative of that. I then consulted with my executive board, which consists of 8 other members, as well as our bargaining team, whose chair is Dan O'Grady, who is a teacher at La Quinta High. And both of those groups were consulted with on this plan that is being presented this evening. I've always said in all of my comments that teachers and students and all staff alike are so eager to get back to the classroom as soon as it is safe to do so. We're seeing things change daily, and the changes that have happened even since last November with the virus, with the health metrics, with other things in place, we need to really make sure that we keep everybody safe and healthy as the #1 priority. No one can learn, no one can teach, no one can serve others if they are not around anymore because they've passed away from contracting a virus. So thank you again for this safety plan, and I look forward to working together on it. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes all comments.
We're going to introduce this as a discussion before you take action.
Okay, so.
Yep, discussion/action on this item. If you're ready for a discussion, we'll prompt it. Are you ready? Okay. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. I actually have a graphic here that I'll be working off of with Cabinet this evening so that we can set the board up for a healthy discussion as necessary, and then we would like board consideration for an action. Basically, this evening, I'm trying to illustrate and put into words a very complex situation so that it's hopefully easy to understand. I believe what you will see this evening and hear this evening to our board is very consistent with what we just heard in public comment, but also the board's intent to get students back to in-person learning at the next available opportunity when it's safe to do so. Now, the safe to do so is the sketchy part because there are differences of opinion and the guidelines constantly change. I heard someone say the other day that the goalpost keeps moving. I think that is true to life, especially with the Super Bowl approaching us. The goalpost does move quite a bit, and we as an education entity, public education entities in the state of California have to follow the guidelines as they come to us. So that's the launch point for this evening. First, I want to anchor everyone in the Blueprint for a Safer Economy, and everyone, I believe, is pretty familiar with this item by now, but if you're not, I'll just quickly brush on the fact that the opportunities in the state are ranked, if you will, by risk, and the risk is then associated with 4 specific tiers. And when I say risk, we're talking about the risk of COVID infection and community spread. So the purple that we talk about a lot is the tier that we've been in for a long time, just came out of what they called deep purple, which was a stay-at-home order. And the purple is based on case rates per 100,000 residents and also positivity rates in the state and also in individual counties. Riverside County remains in the purple tier. And the purple tier basically means you have case rates that exceed 7 per 100,000 adjusted and a positivity rate greater than 8%. So throughout this quick presentation, again, we'll be referencing the Blueprint for a Safer Economy, which is this guide right here. As mentioned, you can pull up, which I did this morning, the statewide metrics. For example, if you look at the state of California on the Blueprint for a Safer Economy website, you will see that our case rate is 71.6, I'm reading it at the top there, new COVID positive cases, and a positivity rate of 12.4%. So what that means is, as you can see illustrated here, 54 counties remain in purple as of today's date, which represents 99.9% of the population in California. These statistics are updated almost daily. And you can also click on your county. So if you drill down into Riverside County, you can see what our specific rates are, which guide our opportunities for business and also for in-person learning. So a look at the most recent data would indicate that we have an adjusted case rate per 100,000 residents of 77.6 in Riverside County. And the adjusted per health equity quartile is positivity rate is 22.5. So case rate again 77.6. So we remain in purple, knowing that we would need to be 7 or less to get out of purple. And the best way I can illustrate where we've been, where we're going, and truthfully where we are tonight, is think of this as a pathway. We're currently on distance learning, highway, so to speak, and we're looking for available markers that allow us, under public health guidelines, to take an on-ramp. And when I say on-ramp is that opportunity for in-person instruction. So the next available sign that says it's permissible to do so, that's what we're queuing up this evening. Right now, we're subject to the guidelines under the Blueprint, which is, again, the 4-tier system. We have to be in red in order to bring students back K through 12 into in-person learning. The on-ramp then would be, what's the opportunity for the students and the parents that desire to return to in-person this year? And we know that to be roughly 60% of our population. We had a marker, a roadmap, if you will, a road sign already established, an on-ramp for January 19. We had gone to great extent to develop a very holistic safety plan. It's actually called DSUSD Moving Forward. It explained the hybrid schedule. We had done the parent surveys and registered the students so that we knew exactly which students were subject to the on-ramp and which ones wanted to stay on the distance learning highway. We had worked collaboratively with our unions, had a negotiated, still have, a negotiated agreement in place that explains what hybrid learning looks like. In all aspects of our plan, we were ready. We even had student assignments made by preference. Unfortunately, we got to January 19th and the COVID cases were way beyond anything we'd ever believed they would be. And that drove us into the stay-at-home order. So unfortunately, that road sign passed January 19th, wasn't available to us. There was a public health order that would indicate you don't have that opportunity, unfortunately. So moving forward, recently, and this actually happened, I want to say it was December 30, as we were exiting to winter holiday break, we received, as everyone did, same time, same day, an announcement that the governor was proposing in legislation a Safe Schools for All plan that would accelerate a return to in-person learning, potentially. And I can't underscore enough that what I'm speaking about when I say Safe Schools for All plan or legislation, it's recently introduced. And I'll underscore that it's proposed language, and it is subject to many changes. We don't even know if it will survive the legislative session. So it is what it is in its current form, and it's known as the Safe Schools for All plan. Under that plan, it accelerates the return to younger students first. In the governor's plan, Safe Schools for All, specifically, you could bring back your students TK through 2 first, followed then by grades 3 through 6, and for a district in our configuration, that's technically a configuration TK through 5. And potentially, if the legislation prevails, there would be grant monies afforded to districts to help offset some of the costs. Now, tethered to this, I can advance here, is a requirement to submit a COVID safety plan anew. And when I say anew, the old standards that we built our moving forward plan off of are a little bit outmoded now due to the fact that Cal OSHA and CDPH have issued new emergency standards that we had to meet. So think of this as upgraded safety standards. If we're going to accelerate the return of students, the standards have been, again, upgraded, and staff has worked feverishly since they received those guidelines January 14th, so extremely recent. We responded to that. We built a new safety plan. We have consulted, as our DSTA president has indicated, with our bargaining units, and there were additional requirements involved in this. But the bottom line is, in simplest terms, we wanted to position the board to fulfill what I think was your charge, to bring the students back as soon as permissible and as soon as safe to do so. So the new COVID safety plan, otherwise known as a CSP, is what the guidelines are now in the state of California for schools that tells us when it's safe to do so, with an overlay of those metrics of the 4 tiers, notwithstanding any additional influence by the current proposed Safe Schools for All. I know it's getting a little complicated, but we have to prepare with what we know of in the governor's proposal that requires us, again, to submit a school safety plan in order to be eligible for what might be legislation and what might be potential funding in the future. And unfortunately, the current deadline to receive all the benefits of those opportunities is February 1. And our next regular board meeting is scheduled next Tuesday, February 2. So you see why we've been working feverishly to update our plan so we don't miss any opportunity that might come to us down that road, so we can allow those students that want that on-ramp to take the on-ramp at that time. So what you have before you this evening is our updated safety plan, the CSP, which is a requirement not only for the legislative action, but it's a new requirement because the standards have changed, that no matter when we bring our students back in the current 4-tier system, this has to be in place. And there are lots of additional requirements and a lot more expenses and logistics involved, and Cabinet will go through those one by one, so you're comfortable with that before you take action on this item. All right, we'll first start with the stable group structures that's required within the CSP. And I believe that's Dr. Kelly Mae Vollmer, Education Services Assistant Superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. So just a really quick explanation of the stable cohort structures, which may be familiar to you because we've been talking about it for a while in the hybrid plan. But underneath this stable structure part of the plan, students and staff would be kept in stable groups with a fixed membership that stays together for all activities. So they stay together for instruction, they stay together for recess, they stay together for lunch, so as to minimize or avoid contact with other groups or other individuals that are not part of that stable group. These groups would have a maximum of 14 students in each cohort and up to 2 teachers in each planned stable group. Students would not be departmentalized in these cohort settings. As you know, some of our elementary schools, students in a grade level will go to 1 teacher for math, 1 for language arts. That won't work under this plan for preschool through 5 because that would involve mixing those cohorts of students, so there will be no departmentalization. And elective classes such as music, Spanish, will continue to be delivered in a virtual environment. And just a reminder to what Mr. Bailey said, this is for pre-K through 5 only. When we're talking about electives being delivered in that virtual environment, we're talking about TK through 5. So those electives will be delivered on the days that the student cohort is learning from home, because remember, we have those A-B cohorts. So when the students are at home, they'll get those electives, and again, that's just TK through 5. Thank you.
And I might add real quick that by deduction, you could probably figure out if the governor's plan would go forward and we can accelerate the return of TK through 5, the grades 6 through or 7 through 12 default back to the 4-tier system. So we'd have to be in red to bring back the older kids under the current legislative proposal. Again, I underscore proposal. All right, next element within the plan, entrance, egress, and movement within the school. Mr. Aquino, Business Services.
Good evening. So this particular part of the plan speaks to the movement of people on a school site, particularly our students and staff. We are already have limited to or restricted non-essential visitors on campus, so that will continue during if we are allowed to open. Our classroom spaces, to piggyback off of what Dr. Vollmer said, that is to make sure that we are allowing for the maximum space in the classrooms. We provided all the principals with the square footage of every classroom, which on a standard size classroom is about 16 pupils in a, or 16 people in a classroom space, not to exceed the 14 that was mentioned under the stable cohorts. That speaks to the number of the desks. No less than 4 feet between students is what's allowed in a classroom space. So if we were able to try to maximize the amount of students in any particular classroom, we provided the principals with a map of what you could achieve with 6 feet of distancing. Anything below that, not to exceed 14, if the classroom space was a lot smaller, may achieve an additional 2 students. We've provided protection signage, which includes directional signs when that's appropriate. We've done, as you all have seen, safety barriers at the front offices. In addition to the elementary schools have been provided safety screens for student desks. Schools would be limiting the sharing of supplies between students. And the map with the ingress and egress of movement throughout the sites would also include student drop-off and pickup. Now, to add to that, we will continue to provide meals, and as everybody has known, we've been providing meals since the beginning of the pandemic, and we have a nice system for that, so that would continue under the potential return. We would offer grab-and-go meals for those under 100% virtual, but also provide meals on site for students. We did increase our seating capacity. We spent quite a bit of dollars to do that. We purchased about 80% more of table seating at every single school, so to make sure that we can maximize space between students during meal times. And that is all for that.
Thank you, Mr. Aquino. I believe Mr. Aquino will join Mrs. Fisher, Assistant Superintendent, Student Support Services, to talk through the face coverings and other essential protective gear.
Right. Well, our face coverings, and I've talked about this quite a bit, so there's not a whole lot of change, but of course, CDPH requires face coverings for both staff and students. All staff are expected to wear face coverings except when eating or drinking, whether at the workplace or performing work off-site, and when interacting in person with any staff or member of the public. We also have for staff, this is new, who come into routine contact with others, CDPH is recommending the use of the disposable 3-ply surgical masks, which are more effective than the cloth face coverings. We also, all students, we've made this decision a few months ago, from preschool through high school are expected to wear face coverings on school grounds and the bus. And the following exemptions, under 2, or if they have a medical or disability that would impede them, or when it would inhibit communication with a person who is hearing impaired. A cloth face covering or face shield should be removed for meals, snacks, nap time, or when it needs to be replaced. So when our little ones are going to lunch, as Dr. Vollmer was talking about in regards to when we are able to bring them back, we would provide a label with the student's name and room number plastic baggie that those masks would go into so they don't end up on the ground or on the table somewhere, and then would be returned after they finish eating. Also, participants in youth and adult sports should wear face coverings when participating in the activity. If sports participants will be frequently or consistently within 6 feet of each other during play, and face coverings can be worn without compromising player safety, they should be worn. This includes most low and moderate risk sports except for swimming and diving. And then, of course, if a student inadvertently fails to bring a face covering, all school sites and buses will have extras for them to wear.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, with the first round of federal relief dollars, we did procure a large number of face coverings to supply for staff. As you see, as some of the board is wearing tonight, we gave the second half of 5 masks per employee just within the past week. But all our school sites, including the district office, we have stock in the warehouse to make sure that we're able to meet those demands.
Fisher, health screening?
All right, the health screenings, which I know we've talked about a little before too, all students and staff will be required to self-screen for the symptoms of COVID-19 prior to reporting to any district site. Of course, if you have been anywhere, you know all the symptoms and know that if you are experiencing any of those COVID-19 related symptoms, that not to come to school. If they exhibit symptoms, a student or staff at school, they'll be required to wait in an identified isolation room until they can be transported home. If you are doing the wellness screening, as you should prior to arriving at school or a bus stop, you would be looking at whether your students are ill or experiencing any symptoms. If you're in the last 14 days, if your child's been requested to self-quarantine by a physician, or if anyone in your household is in isolation due to a positive COVID-19. Also, and I know I've said this several times, it's so important for the parents to have current emergency contact information on file and be prepared to pick up their student if called. And again, the same applies to staff. They must do the wellness screening before they come to work. If they have any symptoms, report to their supervisor.
Continue, healthy hygiene practices.
Okay. The use of hand washing stations and hand sanitizer stations will be promoted and incorporated into the routines for staff and students. We will provide those. Front office will have freestanding hand sanitizer dispensers. Classrooms without sinks will have wall-mounted sanitizer dispensers. Portable hand washing stations will be made available outdoors at school sites. Teachers will review healthy hygiene practices daily with students. And then the signage, as Mr. Aquino spoke about, is also posted in areas to remind students and staff of proper techniques for hand hygiene.
Identification, tracing.
Okay. We have designated district staff to support the contact tracing in accordance to CDPH. And that is to help us create and submit lists of exposed staff and students, communicate to the local health department, and the notification of exposed people. So our process is as follows. Whether it's an employee or a parent would notify a supervisor or principal of a positive COVID test of their student, or if it's an employee of themselves. The supervisor and principal would email the district with the following information: the student name, the site, the date that the student was at site, the date of the positive test, and contact information. And for employees, personnel would inform the employee of the COVID leave information. And then staff from student services are responsible for inputting that information to a tracking spreadsheet. And then our school nurses would contact the employee or the parents to check on their health, complete the contact tracing information, and discuss the return to school or work criteria. And after that point, there'd be 3 letters that would be distributed based on CDPH and then Cal OSHA for employees. A general letter would go out to all parents at a particular school site that there was a positive case at that site. Close contact letters would go out for those deemed as close contacts to that particular positive case, whether it's a school site for a student or across the district for staff. And then a letter would go to that particular employee or student that has tested positive, just giving them support and services and also providing return to school or work criteria and a tentative return date. That contact list with all that information is completed and emailed to Riverside County Public Health. And then our maintenance and operation department is contacted to provide deep cleaning of those affected areas.
Social distancing, Mr. Aquino.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we have a maximum of 6 feet and a minimum of 4 feet between student desks in classrooms. There will be very few classrooms in the district that would be necessary to hit a 4 feet distancing in order to hit a 14 classroom capacity. Also to add to that is transportation to and from school. We've already been working with transportation with some of students in the small cohorts, and I feel that's been successful. So we are making sure that the students will be routed according to their student cohorts. Each bus right now is equipped with hand sanitizer for students' use on and off the bus, including in the event that a student did not have a face covering, the bus drivers have supplies to help support in the event that the student did not have a face cover. Siblings can sit together on the bus. Vehicles are disinfected at the end of each run. And if a student were to become ill, they will be isolated to the front area of the bus.
Thank you. Staff training, family education, yet another component of the safety plan required.
Okay, well, for staff training, we've already started, and it was required at the beginning of the school year with Keenan for them to complete the Keenan training for COVID-19. But I thought a really good part of the training that is required through this checklist is our family and community training. So we're looking at doing the live community forums, which will be hosted via StreamYard, and maybe you all have seen some of those that we have put out in regards to training. These sessions will be translated into Spanish and ASL, and additionally, the sessions will be recorded and posted on our district website. So if you don't happen to see it live, you're able to go back and look at some of the trainings on maybe the wellness checklist or the contact tracing or anything that may be needed or families would like to know more about. For staff, along with the Keenan trainings, we're also going to do recorded video trainings or videos for staff training that will be delivered and presented to the sites or departments.
Thank you. And now one of the newest components of the required safety plan, testing of staff and testing of students.
All right, so the staff and students will be asked to take a COVID test if they have symptoms. We look at testing in 2 different ways, whether they're symptomatic or asymptomatic. So as I discussed earlier, if a person is at a school site, whether it's a student or staff, and they have symptoms, then they would be isolated and requested to get a COVID test, and depending on the results, I'll talk about later what the next steps are. So that's the symptomatic type testing. The asymptomatic testing is currently something we're doing for surveillance testing that was in the former plan, which is every 2 weeks where we test all staff twice, or all staff will be done every 2 months. So we are doing that now with our teachers and staff that are working with our small cohorts, and we're using Quest Diagnostic, which is a test that can be mailed to the home. They're able to take the test, mail it in, and get the results back in about 48 hours. Now what this plan that we're looking at takes it up another step, since we're able to, if this all comes to fruition, able to bring back students sooner. while we're still in the deep purple, then they are requiring us to test all staff and students weekly at the site. And what the state has provided for us is to partner with the Valencia branch laboratories to be able to get this done, because this is a monumental task, as you can imagine, but important task that we want to be able to do to be able to bring our kids back. So I've been partnering, talking with Valencia in what we would need to have in place for the site. Your students will be able to be tested on site. You won't need to take them anywhere. For students under 13, obviously we would need parent consent. The tests are the self-administered tests where the swab just goes up about 1 inch in each nostril, and they would have people there to supervise that administration of the test. And they would be done weekly at all school sites for cohort A and cohort B, and those results will continue. Now, in the cadence that the state has provided for us, that would need to be done until we get, while we're still in the deep purple tier. So until we are under 14, we would still need to be doing that weekly. So while we're above 14, we would be doing that weekly for all TK elementary students and staff. When the district moves into purple and red, it changes, the regular purple, it changes to every other week. And once we get down to orange and yellow, which I like yellow at the end because that's the big sunshine and we're finally moving on with this, then only symptomatic testing. Only if someone has symptoms or is considered a close contact would testing be required. So that is, you can imagine, a monumental task that we've been working on to be prepared. It is all set. I have contracts and things ready to go, so when we get to that point where we can bring kids back, we'll be ready for that testing.
You would mind continuing on with identification, reporting of cases?
Okay. So the reporting of confirmed positive and suspected cases in students, we are working on and consistent with California Department of Public Health and our Cal OSHA reporting requirements for employees. So as we identify the case information data, it'll be shared with public health, and that's really to ensure that state and local public health experts can respond to the confirmed cases. So they know who's been present at a school site, to track and understand the extent of the disease transmission within the state, and to support the communities with appropriate prevention and strategy support. So as I talked about before, our staff has the information that they're inputting from right now supervisors, but as more students come on campus, it would be from the principals. And all those line item information is shared with public health. As we do our contact tracing, we share that information with public health and they follow up with the remaining criteria that they have. So we are continuously already been doing that since the very beginning. So that's, again, something that we would continue to do with students.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, what we did at the beginning of the year back in July, our safety committee adopted what's called the Injury Illness Prevention Plan COVID-19 Addendum. Now, what we have as a component of the safety plan is the COVID prevention program, which basically takes the place of the Injury Illness Prevention Plan, COVID-19 Addendum, and beefs it up based on Cal OSHA's updated standards that they have adopted for the start of this calendar year. And as Mrs. Fisher was mentioning about the reporting, record keeping, and access, our Injury Illness Prevention Program Addendum incorporates the reporting requirements and all the things that are necessary that Cal OSHA has adopted that we have now incorporated into what we are now referring to as our COVID-19 prevention program, which is also known as the Injury Illness Prevention Plan COVID-19 Addendum.
Thank you. We're nearing the end of these requirements. Communication plans, Laura Fisher.
All right, so the district will communicate with students, staff, and parents about cases and exposures at the school consistent with the privacy requirements with FERPA and HIPAA. There are 3 letters, which I talked about before, that are distributed to appropriate personnel utilizing public health letter templates when we find out the information for contact tracing and identify each exposure. And again, it's the general letter that goes to every parent or every employee in a department that just describes it or shares that there's a positive COVID at that school site or department. the close contact letters, which would come to any student or staff that has been deemed a close contact, and then the letter to that student or staff that was testing positive. So that communication we would provide, again, utilizing the letter templates that are provided. We also will be communicating in the event of an outbreak, a school closure, or a district closure, again, with parents, students, and staff. So again, I know we've talked about it a little bit, but CDPH defines a school outbreak as 3 or more confirmed or probable cases of staff or students occurring within a 14-day period who are linked in the school, epidemiologically, I never can say that word well, linked in the school, are from different households and are not in contacts of each other in any other investigation case, which means they have to be linked in the school. They can't be in the same family because that would be not necessarily a transmission from the school site, or also contacts from any other investigation case. So looking at that outbreak to determine if a school is going to close for in-person learning, you have to look at certain criteria. So within a 14-day period, has an outbreak occurred in 25% or more stable groups in the school? And within a 14-day period, at least 3 outbreaks have occurred in the school and more than 5% of the school population is infected. If that's happened, then again, in collaboration with public health, because there's all sorts of different situations to look at, they would determine if the school needed to close, and if the length of the closure is usually 14 days, but again, that's according to public health. If it is closed, they typically reopen after 14 days, after the cleaning, public health investigation, and then again, the consult with public health to determine a reopening. If we were to get to a point, and we will not, I hope, ever, criteria for closing the district will close if 25% or more of the schools in a district have closed due to the COVID-19 within a 14-day period. And again, in consultation with public health. Same criteria, if the district is closed, typically they'll reopen after 14 days, again, in consultation with the health department. But along with other communication, there is now a State of California Safe Schools for All hub. And that hub provides information across the state of California on different sites, their exposures, their PPE supply, how many schools are open for in-person learning. So that's a place for also communication for parents to receive and understand what's going on as far as in-school transmissions. And then email and written communications, as you've seen on our website from Mr. Bailey, from the letters that have come from me sometimes out to the community, and from Mr. Bailey on the communication and what's going on in the district or county information.
Thank you. So we're almost to the end of the required components. As mentioned previously, a consultation with labor organizations is a requirement. Dr. Salazar?
Yep, and I am here to attest that the district has consulted with our employee associations. We consulted with DSTA last Thursday on January 21st. We consulted with CSEA 3 times. The first time was last Friday on the 22nd, then again on January 27th, which was yesterday, and today on January 28th. So we shared the plan, we discussed it, we responded to questions and received input, and it was a collaborative and favorable process. Both the employee associations are appreciative of the thoroughness of the plan. And
thank you. And to wrap it up, Dr. Kelly Vollmer, regarding consultation with parents, community.
Absolutely. So on Monday, January 25th, Cabinet met with the Native American Parent Advisory Committee, the District Advisory Committee, the District English Learner Advisory Committee, the African American Parent Advisory Committee, the Migrant Education Parent Advisory Committee, and the Special Education Advisory Committee, Parent Advisory Committee, to share the COVID-19 safety plan, and members that were present had the opportunity to ask clarifying questions and to give any input.
Thank you very much. That wraps it up as far as the elements within the plan that are required and how we've responded to those elements in developing the new school safety plan or COVID safety plan. I did want to give a shout out to all the parents that were involved in the consultation and feedback, as well as DSTA and CSEA. Very much appreciated. And really that cues us up where we are right now. Again, we're trying to follow the road signs. The road signs change. Not only do we have new legislation introduced, the Safe Schools for All plan in the state of California, but we also heard the president talk about his 100-day plan to return students to schools as soon as 100 days. And then there's also an Assembly Bill 10 that addresses this that's currently in play in the California legislature. So we continue to monitor those signs. Again, true to the board's pledge to get the students back as soon as it's safe to do so and as soon as the guidelines allow us. That's what we want to be ready for. And we don't know that this legislation will come to fruition, but we certainly want to meet a February 1 deadline in case it does, which affords us additional opportunities and accelerated pathways for that on-ramp in the hopefully near future. I want to commend staff. This has been a tremendous lift in a very short time. Again, we got these standards January 19th, and the community and DSTA and CSEA for stepping up and answering the call so that we're ready. And there you have it, hopefully queued up for an action.
Is there a motion to approve the COVID-19 safety plan?
So moved, Wendy Jonathan.
Is there a second?
Second, Linda Porras.
Seconded by Linda Porras. Now for discussion, I'm just going to take a little liberty here, and I'm just going to ask everybody if they have any questions for any of the cabinet, or if you also want to make any, we didn't have a board comment section, so I'd like to kind of do that all at once. So Tricia, you're going to start off. If you have any comments to make, go ahead and make them now. And if you have any questions to ask or statements to make on the plan, you can go ahead and do that now too.
Okay, starting first with a couple of questions. On page 8, it notes that DSUSD will assign personnel to clean. That would be custodial staff, or would it be classroom teachers?
No.
Mr. Aquino, I guess? Page 8 in the front section of the numbers.
Yeah, so currently we have our, as far as cleaning up the high-touch surface point areas, our custodians are currently doing that. If you're at the school sites, right now we have some staff on A-B schedule. Some of those staff are also, additional staff are disinfecting those areas as well. If you're here at the district office or paid a visit, you've seen somebody with a high-capacity fogger or sprayer, mister, that's what they're called, and you see them spraying high-touch surface areas. So that is currently already being done, and it's been that way for quite a while.
So at the end of any day, the custodial staff would come in at an elementary level in the classroom and clean with the sprayer or wiping down, or the teacher would be expected to?
No, so we have our custodians who are trained and have the certification to apply the disinfectant. Now, not everybody can apply a disinfectant just on their own. They have to use, there has to be an approved product for use in a school classroom. In addition, if, as an example, we're not expecting the teachers to do that, but if the teacher wanted to utilize the disinfectant themselves, they would have to get the Keenan training. It's a 20-minute video, and it has to be done annually in order for them to apply the disinfectant themselves. But our plan is that we have our custodial staff applying that. In addition, I could just piggyback on that, and I know this is not necessarily on the elementary side, but we are also planning with the secondary schools having a container for a it's called a sanitizing wipe. It's approved, EPA approved. And so students, as they were to walk in, this is under, let's say, red tier, where they could grab the wipe themselves and wipe the desk down if there was transition of students. So we are looking at all avenues to make sure that we could clean as frequently as possible and it be safe to do so.
Okay. On page 4 in that section, it lists to the extent supplies are in stock and available. But I noticed you've probably been stockpiling all these things. So when it says they will be supplied, to the extent supplies are in stock and readily available for distribution, employees will have access to appropriate hygiene products in the workplace. That would be the hygiene products.
Let me see where you're looking.
The soap and the hand sanitizer? I mean, you have plenty for stocking it anyway, right?
Oh, yeah, I don't see stock. I mean, we were a little bit worried in the beginning when, let's say, some of the supplies, the demand was so high with hand sanitizer, that kind of stuff. So as a caveat, I guess you could say that's true, but we have already done a 2-year supply that we have in warehouse, and in addition to schools being able to place their own orders if they want, as supplies exist. So I don't see that being an issue.
Okay, and on the meals, I noticed before you said they bought more tables, replaced old ones, and they spaced them out, so there's 80% or a certain percentage more tables. So the children that are in an elementary setting in a stable group would be leaving the classroom to go eat outside of the classroom at the cafeteria like a normal situation, but staying with their stable group?
Yeah, so our principals, and as you know, every campus is unique, are working that out themselves. But what we did to help support that, we didn't replace tables, we purchased additional tables. So at the end of the day, certainly the schools can replace their existing tables with the new ones that we have purchased. Now, we purchased, I think we spent around, $1.2 million on additional seating at every school site. And that came out to about 80% more of tables that they currently have. And so those tables, which will be delivered in the middle of February, early March, can be strategically placed with the principal's direction on what they think is best to achieve maximum seating capacity for their students.
So they would be out there under classified staff lunch supervisors to eat their lunch, and the teacher would have the same lunchtime as the students as before, or?
As far as how that would work at the schools, I think Kelly may be able to help with that.
I think if I'm understanding your question, the question is, would the teacher have their duty-free lunch? And the answer is yes.
Well, I mean, they might have it at a different time, but I didn't know how that worked.
Right.
With kids.
The plans right now are for them to have their duty-free lunch at the same time that the students have their lunch.
And would children be allowed to go out and play?
So we're talking with the principals, and they're working out recess plans that are highly structured. So it's recess in the sense that the students would be outside, they'd be able to move and get some physical activity. It's not recess in the sense of all the kids intermingling and being all over the playground like we're accustomed to. It would be very structured.
They would have their
They would stay within their cohort.
Exactly.
Almost, if you've seen, some of our schools already have this in place. The students during recess, they've had people come in and actually train the noon yard supervisors, and so the students rotate from station to station. So that type of format, they're rotating through stations so that it's highly structured and there's no intermixing of the cohorts.
I have another question for you, but for Mr. Aquino. On the lunches, I noticed when I was reading it, you've been doing all the meals, and the ones that come to school will be getting breakfast and lunch there, like a self-contained little meal. But it says when they come on campus, they go straight to their group. So do they pick up their breakfast like then, and then come to their classroom and eat breakfast before? Or how does that work if you're feeding those students that come in to have breakfast and then take their lunch home or stay? I don't know if they all go home at lunch.
So Kelly can actually help with that. Now,
okay.
Go ahead, sorry. No, go ahead. So students would be eating breakfast in the classroom because we have to keep those cohorts.
Yeah,
and as you
together.
can imagine, the students they arrive when they arrive, so to speak, if that makes sense. So in order to accommodate them arriving at staggered times, they can't, and keep them in the cohorts, we can't have them going to the lunch table, so they would go directly to the classrooms to maintain those cohorts.
Okay, and then for substitutes, what do you anticipate if, with, this would be for, Ms. Salazar, Dr. Salazar. What do you anticipate our substitute pool being able to handle when the teachers, like as an employee, has to call in and say, oh, I have symptoms this morning or whatever? Do we have online substitutes that handle, I don't even know what you've been doing now, online substitutes handling it, or ones that would be able to come into the classroom?
Yes, we have both. We have current subs in our regular sub pool who've been trained, and they jump in and help with the distance learning.
Okay.
And when we go back to hybrid, we also have a pool of about 75 right now, active subs that are going to be coming back and working in the classrooms. So we have reserves to do both.
Okay, and they might, I noticed, I don't know if our meeting yesterday with the CSBA membership meeting, Wendy Jonathan noticed that they're going to use a school site to either do testing or vaccination for teachers. Is that correct?
Yeah, Laura would know.
Oh, that's you.
That's me.
We all
just share the love.
Okay.
Yes, we are in partnership with Desert Oasis Healthcare, and I actually met with them yesterday, and we're in partnership to provide a vaccination clinic for all district employees, because that's what, and again, to be able to facilitate in-person instruction as soon as possible. We thought that was very important to do. So I met with them yesterday to look at possible sites that would be conducive to all our employees. They actually have a system where they can do 50 vaccinations every 20 minutes. It's quite amazing. And so we sent the survey out to all employees and closed it last night at 5 o'clock. And those numbers are going to Desert Oasis. And then we don't have a timeline yet or a date yet, because just like with the rest of the county, state, country, we're waiting on the allotments to come in. But we will be guaranteeing the first day or two or however long it takes to get all the employees done. And in part of that agreement, we also are allowing them to use that site to vaccinate community members. So as soon as I get more details on that and dates, I will let you know. But it is an exciting partnership to be able to provide that. And of course, we partnered with Riverside County Public Health for the Amistad, the former Amistad site, to provide ongoing COVID testing.
Do you know about, about 3,000 employees for classified and certificated? Did it show, did you have a good response to your survey, and did it show a percentage that are willing to get vaccinated?
Yes, out of the 2,729, right? I always have to look at Dr. Salazar for that. We had over 2,000 respond. Yeah. And that is counting our active subs, but I haven't gone through yet because we just closed it at 5 o'clock last night to see how many are employees. I also know that some of our staff have been able to get into other clinics, as difficult as it is, and at least receive their first vaccination. Now, this vaccination clinic with Desert Oasis is Pfizer, the Pfizer vaccine. So unfortunately, if you got a Moderna one first, you can't get the Pfizer one as the second dose. But for our employees, they have guaranteed the first and second dose. And that is huge, because right now, those of us that have gotten the first one, it's hard to find the second one. Mm-hmm.
One question for Mr. Bailey. By filing this plan by February 1st, and we know we're being in this purple tier, we probably wouldn't be able to open by February 15th, but as long as it's filed by February 1st, when we are able to open, then we're eligible for the full funding to help with all the costs of the testing and all the COVID things?
Great question. And unfortunately, the answer is very soft because it's a legislative proposal. It's only been entertained in one session, which I actually watched, and it hit some headwind the first session. So we don't know what the language will look like ultimately, if it even exists at the end of the legislative session. It might take on a new form. There might be a modified version of it, or simply Bill 10 that we're monitoring for return. It's really what today's action is to place a safety marker on it just in case. I do not want to be in a position down the road if the session prevails and an opportunity presents itself, whereas we miss out on any accelerated opportunity to bring kids back earlier, or we miss out on any additional funds that might support that early on-ramp. So today's action is just complying with the Feb 1, assuming and hoping that that opportunity prevails at some point.
One last question. When we say that the electives, because I know the parents, some of the parents are very concerned with the sports and the music, the band, some of the things that their kids are missing out on in high school and maybe even middle school. But what I was wondering is, you know, the electives spoke to the elementary. It didn't really specify that in here, so it was like, you know, somebody reading it are going to go, okay, we can't do band. So does that mean this plan it's really geared toward the TK 6? Or it really speaks, I think 90% of it speaks to up to high school as well, but I think a statement like that about the electives should have a thing about, you know, it only affects, anyway, you know what I'm trying to say, Kelly?
Yeah.
I do know what you're trying to say. Go ahead.
I'll make a comment, and
Yeah,
then I'll
please.
let you fill in the blank, so to speak. So the plan itself is a public health order, and it supersedes all previous guidance, this new guidance that came out January 19th. So it does cover TK through 12 in the sense that when it's safe to bring students back, whether that be through a new legislative opportunity or if we revert back to the 4-tier system, it's in play. And it's just demonstrating that we are confident that we are providing a safe environment for staff and students upon their return.
And so that section that you're specifically referring to, and understandably there was some confusion when we're talking about electives being delivered virtually still. It's under the section of the small group cohorting, which are elementary school students, because we're bringing them back if this legislation passes in the purple, where we were not previously allowed to bring students back in the purple. The elementary school students have to remain in those small group cohorts. So the elective section that you're referring to is under that small group cohort section. Middle school and high school students, even under this plan, as we understand it, we would still have to hit the red before they could return, which doesn't fall under that small group cohort section.
I see, I didn't notice the heading.
No, that's okay.
So
No problem.
I thank you for the answers to my questions, and you know, I'm in favor of this. This is a very complete and well done plan in a hurry here. But it's I think it's going to be very good to have this filed on time.
Hey, Linda Porras.
Yes, I just want to say, yes, this is an excellent plan. It's well thought out and very detailed. And I think you guys did an awesome job, and especially in the amount of time that you had to put it together. And I think that Trish asked a lot of questions that I was thinking. So I don't really have a lot of questions. I just really want to commend you guys for all that you're doing. And I really think that it's great that we're being very proactive and we're ready to go when the time comes. So thank you so much.
Wendy Jonathan.
Great plan, very comprehensive. I do want to say that, you know, I want to commend our staff, because this has not been just pulled together in the past few weeks. We've been working on this since last year, putting all this together and what we needed to do. So I think a lot of respect has to be given to Superintendent Bailey and the cabinet and the staff for what a great job in making sure that it is as complete as it is. I just have one question, and it's, you know, as I said, the whole program, the whole plan is extremely comprehensive, and it's at a level that I would expect from Desert Sands. We had talked, and this was back last year, about taking temperatures of students and staff when they came, and I see now that they're going to be filling out a health plan, a health survey, so to speak, every day. I hope that will be done with, that our parents and our staff will be diligent about that and making sure that they're doing it and taking into consideration that, what it is, what it means to come to a school where they may be slightly under the weather, but they may think they're okay. So I'm slightly concerned about that. But we had talked about taking temperatures, and we had gotten thermometers, if I believe. And Jordan, you can clarify that. Are we just, I didn't see that at all in the plan. Are we just not doing that anymore?
Hi, Ms. Jonathan, it's Laura Fisher.
Laura.
Let me answer that, because yes, Mr. Aquino did order. We have the touchless thermometers, and also, what are we calling the other ones? The biometric screeners that we will have in the isolation rooms that we will be using if there's any symptomatic cases at the sites or departments, or we have any questions. But we've also done a lot of research, and as Mr. Balin, we've all said, information has just evolved as people are learning more, and have really found these screenings are probably more valid than necessarily taking temperatures. Sometimes you can get, false negatives and things, and when you're talking about, students all entering the school site and taking temperatures at that time, whether we can use that as a true picture of symptomatic students. So we've decided the screening, and the health department is not requiring the temperature be taken, but the self-screenings we find is the best way to go about it. And it is important, and I appreciate Ms. Jonathan, and I know I've said it like at every meeting, board meeting, the wellness screenings are important for staff. And I know in the past that work ethic to, come to work even if you're feeling a little off was something we all did. But right now we cannot do. And even with parents, with their students and teachers in the classroom, we cannot send students to school if they're not feeling well. Not popping a couple of Tylenol in them and sending them to school is not what we can do. We want to get the school open, we want students back in, but that wellness screening, and that's going to be a lot of our community and parent training. That's going to be number one in the training, is that wellness screening and how important that is. Because, we can have kids that feel fine and get to school and have symptoms. For the most part, you kind of have an idea in the morning. And so that's going to be critical that people follow that health screening every day.
Yeah. And as you said, I don't think anybody, especially our staff, are not going to be saying, I don't care about this, I'm not going to pay attention. I know, as being a former teacher, there were times when I wasn't I was borderline, and I probably could have stayed at home, but I went to school because I really felt that I was better off being at school, and I wasn't going to put anybody in danger. But it was my duty to be at school, right. And I didn't want to miss school. So I want to emphasize that it's really, as you said, and very important that the staff recognizes, as much as you want to be there for the students, you also have to be aware that this is about everybody's health, not theirs alone. So,
absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And great job. Thank you all.
I think planning for a sub, is harder. I think it's easier just to go in and work. But I agree. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to touch on the vaccination process. I am so happy to see that Desert Sands is taking the steps to make sure that their staff is vaccinated and providing an outlet for that. So that's good. Because it is hard to get an appointment. Even though, 1B has opened up, it is really hard. So I'm glad to see that. I wanted to ask about The testing will be mandatory for staff?
The
Or
COVID
just a
testing?
recommended, yes.
It is a highly encouraged recommendation. We cannot force a person to test, but this is the safeguard with it. So if you look at a person that maybe is a close contact and would be deemed a close contact that should go get tested, or even a person with symptoms that should get tested, even if they don't, the criteria to return to work would eliminate anybody coming back to work positive, because you have to meet that 3 criteria to return to work. And so, yeah, I mean, that's been a tough one, and we hope everyone, and I really haven't seen many people that are refusing to get that test. We haven't had any close contacts that my staff has called and sent letters to that said, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do it. But if we would run into that, the criteria of not having a fever, if they have symptoms, they couldn't come back anyway. And so they would have to be symptom-free to be able to come back. And if you're on quarantine and asymptomatic and never have symptoms, whether they get tested or not, they would be able to return after the 10th day. So there are safeguards in place for that.
Now, I understand this is just tentative legislation. I mean, there's nothing firmed up yet. So this is just in case all that passes and we are ready to go. Just to understand and to clarify, if this passes, that would allow our TK to, in this case, 5th grade, in our district to start school even though we are in the purple tier.
If it would materialize in its present form in the draft language, yes. You could enter at a case rate of what is now draft language, 25 per 100,000 residents
We
or
would
less.
still have to meet that criteria.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because we're
And
like-
that's a great clarifying question, thank you. Yes, it would basically accelerate the return to in-person learning for TK through 6 across the state, depending on your configuration, TK through 5 in Desert Sands. And it would accelerate in the sense that if you meet that 25 or less than 25 case rates per 100,000, you could bring those students back in the hybrid model if it stays in its present form and if it's passed.
So just to make sure that, yes, will be accelerated, but we still have to meet certain public health criteria.
Safety plan that you're taking action on this evening, and a case rate currently draft language of less than 25 per 100,000. That's correct.
That does not address middle school and
It
secondary.
does not. We've asked clarifying questions, and it would definitely appear that 7 through 12 reverts back to the 4-tier system. We'd have to be in red for in-person learning. And just to clarify also, Ms. Conover, thank you for your questioning. The safety plan needs to be in place regardless of these accelerated opportunities. It supersedes all previous direction. So this will be in place for any opportunity to return in person forward.
And just as far as the recess, so I thought originally the plan was for students to get a grab-and-go lunch. So now that's kind of morphed into we're staying in longer? The day's now going to be a complete day till 2:45, 3, or?
Yes, I'd have to pull up each of the plans, as each of the schools, as you know, have varied start times to some degree. So I can't say that exact time, but yes, looking at a complete day with the students having lunch there. However, still in place in our hybrid plan for middle school and high school is the grab-and-go lunch. Because as on an elementary school, with the additional tables and the additional space, we can cohort those students in a lunch setting. In a middle school or high school setting, it's too many students to accommodate lunch really of any kind that allows for safe distancing, which we'd still have to do. So middle school and high school, the plan still exists when they can come back for that grab-and-go lunch.
Right, really hesitant about the recess though, because teaching for years, recess is just chaotic. No matter how you look at it, there's nothing controlled about it. That's just the nature of...
Yeah, it's going to have to look different in the sense that I think what you're referencing and what we normally would go to in our minds is all of 3rd grade goes to recess at 9:45, right?
Right.
All of that will have to adjust. We're not going to be able to let whole grade levels out. So all of that the principals are looking into all of that, so
Okay.
it's very structured. Yeah, really great point.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
recess and structure are just kind
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah,
they
don't
don't
go
go
hand
in
in
the
hand.
same sentence.
Right,
I
correct.
mean, it's just,
Yes, I
that's
understand.
just realistic. Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you for the plan. You guys did an awesome job.
After I make these comments, I want to make these comments first, and that is, since March of last year when we shut down, I've come by the district office on many occasions to sign papers because I forgot and do stuff with payroll. And I've seen our cabinet working, and I know they haven't stopped working. And I know, like I told Jordan, you know, he's procured more plexiglass in the last year than anybody I know. And I had to come by yesterday to sign some papers, and it was during a cabinet meeting, and I saw Ms. Vollmer, Dr. Vollmer, in her office working. I saw Mr. Bailey in his office working. I can't get into your office, and I didn't go upstairs to see your office. But I want to tell everybody in the public that our administrators are working, and they're working very hard to get your students back into school. And as the rules change, we try to adapt to them. The very first week, unsafe, the cabinet was in the boardroom, and you guys were all together, and you were grinding it out. And so that has not gone unrecognized by me. And so I'm very pleased with what has been happening. Having said that, I'm very frustrated like other people. I read, I think it was Allen Independent School District that you put in our packets. I got that yesterday, and I read that. And so I see parents, and I see other states. I see Arizona, I see Texas, I see everybody else back in. I go to ride my bike on El Paseo, and I see people at restaurants. And everybody looks like they're eating. And I was up here, and it takes 21 days to starve to death. So I know people are concerned about safety, but yet everybody is getting their food. So people are taking risks when it's in their own self-interest for self-preservation. Nobody is advocating for our students. The people in Sacramento aren't advocating for them, and they don't vote. And so it is like nobody up in Sacramento cares. Gavin Newsom put out a proposal that got shot down. My understanding is they're not dealing with it because they're worried about rent control and kicking people out, because the students are not their priority. We don't have the power as a board to vote at any time since March of last year to say we're open. And we have our unions that we're dealing with, and they haven't been able to get to work some of the time. I know I have a difference of opinion on what safety is, but there have been, most of the time that they're not been worked, it's been against the law for them to come to work. They didn't have the opportunity in March, April, and May of last year to say we want to come back to work because they were closed, and that wasn't our decision, and that wasn't their decision. I do think we're at a point where it's safe to go back, but we can't make them go back because the governor has decided that they're not essential workers. They're not firemen. They're not grocers. They're not the guy at Del Taco that's still working the fast food drive-up. I mean, he's 17 and he's essential, and yet the fundamental basis of our country is our educational system and our free public education, and that's not essential. And so I listened to your comments, and you're not getting a response from us, and that's on us, and that's not on you. And you're your son's advocate. And I've told people that when they come and they complain about the school, I say, you know, like I had a parent, you know, my daughter's 12 and I'm going to let her handle this with the teacher. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. You're an advocate. You're an adult. Your child's not an adult to deal with adults. And so there's nothing, it's so frustrating for me that you're frustrated because I can't solve your problem. I feel like I'm up here and I should be trying to solve your problem, and I can't do it. I can't say, hey, all those in favor of opening the schools tomorrow say aye, 5-0, 4-1, 3-2, whatever. We can vote on it. We're not going to have any employees there doing it. So it's not up to us. We can't open the schools. We don't have that ability. And if we haven't been able to communicate to you that we don't have that authority, I'm communicating it to you now. If we could open and it was up to me, I'd do it. I can't, so I can't. I read the comments of the people that are involved, and we've talked about sports because sports has its own CIF, and so they deliver things to us and say, this is what you can do and this is how you can do it. Because we talk about sports from time to time doesn't mean that we don't care about the band and the choral. Those activities are just as important to those students as sports is to the sports students. And for them to say it's going to be virtual is so frustrating, because as a former math teacher, when we talk about 25 out of 100,000, I keep looking at my calculator and I keep going 25 divided by 100,000, and it's 25 thousandths of a percent. If we're 25 thousandths of a percent people testing positive, that is a pandemic. I thought a pandemic hit 30% of the population, and we don't even hit 1%, and we're shut our doors. And it's frustrating. So I hear you. I'm frustrated I can't do anything about it. I see, again, this is not a come down on cabinet, but I see him work. And every time we get the opportunity to put a plan together, you guys have put a plan together. This is a great plan. But I don't have any faith in Sacramento that they're going to basically get their together and get this done. Because they're not. They're not concentrating on the well-being of anybody under 18 that doesn't vote. And so you come here, and I'm happy to hear your complaints. I'm just telling you my own frustration is it's those guys. We can't make them open our schools. We can't make them say who's essential and who's not. And so I get it when my kid's 27, so he's not in school. I don't know what I would do if I was you. I don't know what I would do if I was you. And then I read about the band and the choral, and I don't know what I'd do for them because it never faced us. It's not that we don't have empathy for you and we don't want what's best for you. It's we can't provide you what you're asking us to provide you. This plan is the best we can do at this time to be ready for something that I honestly believe is going to change, and they're going to drop the ball on it. But if by chance they can get their stuff together up in Sacramento to give us an opportunity, we'll be one of the few school districts that actually has a plan that met the time limit, that meets all the requirements. So again, I commend the board, but I didn't want to just say I commend the cabinet when parents, it's not going to do anything for you. We're going to have a plan, and we're going to stay in purple with, you need less than 0.1% of the people getting ill. And I don't know if anybody else has read about it, but they say it's not the actual rate, it's the adjusted rate. And so you got to look what the adjusted rate is. And as a former math teacher, when they say the adjusted rate is 73, that's less than 73 out of 100,000, because some of that rate gets increased by the amount of ICU beds you have available when you get over 35 per 100,000. So they're lying to you on that too, by the way. There's not 73 out of 100,000. It's probably closer to about 65. And so they can't give us a right number, and it's frustrating. We're doing the best we can. Everybody's doing the best we can. And it's never going to be, we will never have a school that we can promise is going to be safe, but we can make it as safe as we can, and we're working to make it as safe as we possibly can, but we will never be able to guarantee 100% of our students and employees are not going to get sick at work or at school. It's reality. Nobody ever does. It's a bell curve. Somebody's going to get sick. So, having said that, I guess I complained enough. I apologize. It is time to vote. So this is not a resolution. This is just a pass, right? So all those in favor of approving the COVID-19 safety plan say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that's 0. That carries 5-0. There are no announcements, and the meeting is adjourned at 7 o'clock.